Chapter 22. Let me lead. Dawn Stripe's mew was barely a whisper as she padded past him through the darkness. Tall Paw was happy to fall in behind her, staying close enough to feel her tail tip brush his cheek. He could feel Shrew Paw's breath warm on his rump, and Hair Flight's solid paw steps sounded reassuringly from the rear. Tall Paw's heart fluttered like a caught sparrow. This tunnel was far bigger than the tunnel he'd walked with Sandgorse, but it was still a tunnel, still a long way from light and space and air. Tall Paw felt the immense darkness pressing around him. His throat tightened until the air seemed too thick to breathe. You're following in the paw steps of countless cats. StarClan will keep you safe. Dawn Stripe's tail slid ahead. Tall Paw sped up, frightened of losing the feel of its soft tip on his nose. Cold air swirled around him, piercing his pelt. He sensed the huge weight of rock hanging above his head. Ahead, the distant echo of dripping water hinted at deepness he was frightened to imagine. How long till they reached the Moonstone? Steadying his breath, he focused on his paws, trying to relish the solidity of the stone beneath them, constantly stretching his muzzle to keep contact with Dawn Stripe's tail. I smell fear scent. Aren't you feeling at home, Wormpaw? Shrew Paw snarked. Be quiet, Shrew Paw! Hair Flight's angry hiss sounded from behind. Tall Paw's mind swirled. He fought back panic. Every paw step was taking him farther from the light. Could he find his way out if the others weren't here? A stream of cold air suddenly buffeted his flank. Another billowed from the other side. There must be more tunnels branching off this one, snaking deep into the earth. Please let me out. As a terrified groan welled in his throat, the air around him changed. It became still, the vicious chill easing. Tall Paw halted as Dawn Stripe's paw steps fell silent. We're here, she announced softly, in the cavern of the Moonstone. Shrew Paw pushed past Tall Paw, rocking him on his paws. Where is it? Where's the stone? There must be a cloud covering the moon. Hair Flight's deep mew sounded close to Tall Paw's ear. Just wait. Tall Paw strained to see through the darkness. His nose twitched as he smelled the familiar scent of heather. Fresh air must be flowing into the cavern from somewhere above them. Suddenly, a beam of silver light sliced down through the dark. Tall Paw blinked as it cast a glow over a huge stone in the middle of the cavern. The Moonstone. The surface of the rock glittered like sunshine on water, sending light rippling across the dark walls. Tall Paw backed away, bristling. Don't be afraid. Dawn Stripe stepped forward and crouched beside the stone, the silver light drenching her pale golden fur. Come and touch your nose to it. You too, Shrew Paw. Shrew Paw was circling the stone, his tail spiking. Do we have to touch it? Hair Flight stooped beside Dawn Stripe. You won't share with StarClan until you do. Shrew Paw padded warily toward the Moonstone and, hunkering down, stretched his muzzle forward. Tall Paw watched his denmate's eyes close. Shrew Paw's ruffled fur smoothed out, and his whole body softened as if he had drifted into the best sleep ever. Come on, Tall Paw. Dawn Stripe coaxed him forward. StarClan will welcome you. Tall Paw padded closer. His heart seemed to swell in his chest. Will I see Sandgorse or Brackenwing? Hunching beside the rock, he narrowed his eyes against its glare. He took a deep breath and touched his nose to the sharp stone. At once he was plunged into darkness, sucked down by currents too strong to resist. But somehow there was nothing to be frightened of, and Tall Paw let himself fall until his vision cleared. He felt his paws sink into muddy earth. Rain lashed his pelt and battered his ears. Tall Paw peered through the storm. Was this StarClan? A churned field stretched away on one side, while a hedge pressed at his other, rattling as a cold wind shook it. Tall Paw saw several solid-looking shapes ahead, ears and tails silhouetted in the rain. The rogues! He recognized their dripping pelts as they trudged beside the hedge, trying to find some shelter from the storm. One by one they clambered over the snaking roots of a lightning-blasted tree. Tall Paw crept after them, ducking under the low branches as though he was stalking prey. He halted beside the charred tree and watched them disappear along the trail. This isn't StarClan. This is just a dumb dream. Frustration flared inside him. Where's Sandgorse? Curling his claws into the wet earth, he screwed his eyes shut and tried to sleep once more. Darkness engulfed him, and he was swirling through emptiness again. More shapes flashed on the edge of his vision. A two-leg place, a dense forest, a chattering river sparkling in sunlight. Tall Paw blinked open his eyes, desperate to find himself in StarClan's territory. The moonstone gleamed at the end of his nose. He was back in the cavern. Where was StarClan? Fear wormed in Tall Paw's belly. They hadn't shared anything with him. He backed away from the moonstone, noticing that Shrewpaw was still resting peacefully by the stone. Were the ancestors ignoring him because of Brackenwing? Or was StarClan angry because he hadn't been able to follow in his father's paw steps? Tall Paw's heart twisted. I tried! Dawnstripe blinked open her eyes and stretched. She met Tall Paw's gaze. Did you dream? Before he could answer, Shrewpaw jumped up. Wow! I saw the star and some old cat called Days. Hush! Hairflight stirred beside him, his mew thick with sleep. You don't share your StarClan dreams with any cat. Dawnstripe nodded. You keep the secrets they share with you in your heart. Unless you're a medicine cat and StarClan speaks to your clan through you. Hairflight stretched, arching his spine and quivering. Dawnstripe padded toward the cavern entrance. Let's get back to the clan. Shrewpaw bounded past her. I'll lead, Dawnstripe called. I don't want you getting lost. Hairflight and Shrewpaw fell in behind her, and Tall Paw followed last, glancing over his shoulder at the moonstone as he headed out of the cavern. The huge rock glittered frostily in the moonlight. A pang tugged at Tall Paw's belly. StarClan, why didn't you share with me? Cold air washed his pelt as he stepped into the darkness, trailing a little behind his clanmates. Numbness set into his paws, and Tall Paw had to force himself to keep plodding upward, following the scent and sound of his clanmates as they led him out of the hill. Hairflight and Shrewpaw were already scrambling down the rocky slope when Tall Paw emerged into moonlight. I thought we'd lost you, Dawnstripe murmured. She waited for Tall Paw to jump down from the ledge and fell in beside him. Tall Paw walked in silence. As they reached the meadows, he hardly felt the wet grass drag along his flanks. All he felt was tiredness, growing heavier with each paw step. The sky was turning pale beyond the moortop as they neared the Wind Clan border. The Thunder Path was quiet, and they crossed it easily, just as Dawnstripe had promised. Dawnstripe peered closely at Tall Paw as the ground began to slope up toward the moor. Are you okay? She prompted. I'm fine. Tallpaw padded past her without meeting her gaze. Just tired. He glanced up the slope to the top of the moor, then back toward Highstones. They seemed to catch fire as the rising sun turned them red, then yellow, paler and paler against the lightening sky. The jagged peaks loomed over the valley, piercing the clouds. To Tallpaw, the moor hardly seemed big enough to contain WindClan, hemmed by forest, crushed by the sky, cut off short by the river in the gorge. But this is home. Breaking into a run, he bounded past his clanmates and raced down the hillside toward camp. The clan was already stirring. Lily-Whisker and Whiteberry yawned at the entrance to their den. The meeting hollow looked as crowded as a burrow full of rabbits as the clan gathered around Reedfeather, waiting for his orders for the day's patrols. "Tallpaw!" Hopkit scrambled across the tussocks, stumbling each time his twisted paw buckled underneath him. "Did you see the moonstone?" "Yes." Tallpaw nuzzled his head. The kit's wide, friendly gaze seemed to banish the darkness of Mother Mouth. Sorrel Kit raced after her brother, her gray and brown fur spiked with excitement. She stopped beside Tallpaw and began sniffing his pelt, her mouth open as she tasted the strange scents he'd brought back. She glanced over her shoulder at Pigeon Kit. "He smells funny." Pigeon Kit pushed past her and inspected Tallpaw closely. "Your fur's all wet." "We've been trekking through long grass," Tallpaw explained. "What did you see?" Sorrel Kit flicked her short tail. "The moonstone." Sorrel Kit widened her eyes. "Was it big?" "Bigger than Tall Rock, and it shone like the stars." "Did you touch it?" Hopkit leaned back, his fluffy ears pricked. "You'll have to wait till it's your turn to visit it." Tallpaw was too tired to talk. "Isn't it time you had your first taste of mouse?" Pigeon Kit puffed out his chest. "I've already tasted it." "So have I," Sorrel Kit announced. Tallpaw spotted a bird on the prey heap. "What about Lapwing?" he asked. "Meadowslip's worried we'll swallow the feathers," Hopkit mewed. "What if I pluck it for you?" Tallpaw offered. Sorrel Kit raced around him. "Will you?" she squeaked. "Come on." He headed toward the prey heap. Pigeon Kit and Sorrel Kit streaked ahead. "Wait for me!" Hopkit was struggling to keep up, his crooked paw twisting beneath him. Tallpaw turned back and tucked his nose under the Black Tom's belly. "Hang on," he warned, flipping the kit onto his shoulders. Tallpaw purred as the young kit dug his tiny claws into his pelt and carried him over to his littermates. Bright sunshine turned the distant trees golden. Tallpaw took a step forward, bringing him right to the edge of Outlook Rock. Under the sweep of empty blue sky, he could see sheep and two-legs, dogs and monsters. He could even see a hare sitting in the middle of a distant meadow. The air around him was completely still, as though the world were holding its breath. "A black and white dog is chasing sheep in the hill meadow," Tallpaw reported. Dawnstripe shifted behind him. "And there are grouse beside the copse." Tallpaw imagined padding beneath the distant trees, new scents bathing his tongue, the grouse within stalking distance. His mouth watered. "There's a fire in a two-leg place." The scent of smoke touched his nose, and he glimpsed a plume rising from the top of a two-leg nest. Feathers flashed in the sunshine, and Tallpaw's gaze flicked toward a hawk as it dived out of the sky. He scanned the meadow where it swooped, trying to pick out its prey. His paws itched to be there. He could snatch the prey out of the bird's path. "Hawk hunting rabbit." "I'm impressed," Dawnstripe got to her paws. "You haven't missed anything." Her pads scuffed the rock. "Let's move on to your battle skills assessment." Tallpaw turned from the edge of the rock, dragging his gaze from the distant fields. He followed Dawnstripe to the training ground, the trail so familiar now that he didn't even have to think about where to put his paws. His thoughts were still on the hawk. He'd traveled across the meadow it had hunted in. Now, he was back inside WindClan's borders, while it was crouching in a treetop, feasting on its catch. Yearning pricked beneath his pelt. What was it like to hunt only for yourself? To have the freedom to go wherever you wanted, without boundaries or codes pinning you down? "Tallpaw?" Dawnstripe's mew jerked him back. "Are you ready?" Shrewpaw was waiting in the middle of the clearing with Hairflight. "How did Tallpaw do at Outlook Rock?" the brown warrior asked. "He passed the assessment easily," Dawnstripe replied. "Good." Hairflight flicked his tail. "Shrewpaw hunted well." "I'm pleased to hear it." Dawnstripe gestured with her tail to send Tallpaw over to his denmate. "Time to test their battle skills," she meowed to Hairflight. "If they perform well enough here, they'll have passed everything." Tallpaw trotted across the grass. Shrewpaw eyed him belligerently. Tallpaw sighed, wishing his denmate weren't so competitive. They could pass this assessment easily if they each gave the other a chance to show off his skills. He crouched in the grass, relaxing the muscles along his spine. "A warrior moves with ease, not stiffness," Dawnstripe's advice rang in his ears. "No claws, no teeth unless there's a real battle. Fight with your wits as well as your paws." Tallpaw made sure his claws were well sheathed and kept his gaze fixed on Shrewpaw, bracing himself for his denmate's first move. "Ready when you are," he mewed. Shrewpaw narrowed his eyes. "Why don't you attack first?" "If you like." Tallpaw wasn't going to let Shrewpaw unsettle him. He focused on Shrewpaw's left shoulder, then leaped for the right. His feint worked. Wrong-footed, Shrewpaw staggered sideways. Shrewpaw's eyes blazed. "Cheater!" It was a fair move. Shrewpaw lunged at Tallpaw. Grasping Tallpaw's shoulders, he kicked a hind paw out from under him. Good move. Tallpaw was impressed and let Shrewpaw roll him onto his side. As soon as their backs were to their mentors, Shrewpaw sank his claws into Tallpaw's pelt. "You won't fool me twice, Wormpaw." Tallpaw flinched. "No claws, remember? We're training to be warriors, not kits," Shrewpaw hissed in his ear. Tallpaw dug his hind claws into the grass and thrust Shrewpaw backward. Pain ripped through him as Shrewpaw tugged a lump of fur from his flank. "Don't let him put you off!" Tallpaw leaped to his paws. Shrewpaw faced him, eyes gleaming. Tallpaw backed away. Let him think he scared me. He felt a twinge of satisfaction as he saw triumph flash in Shrewpaw's gaze. "Come on, Weaselpaw." Shrewpaw sprang. Tallpaw glanced at his denmate's paws. His claws were sheathed, for now. He knew that Shrewpaw would be digging them in the moment they were out of sight of Hairflight and Dawnstripe. He leaped sideways. Shrewpaw twisted to counter his move, and Tallpaw shoved his muzzle beneath Shrewpaw's belly. Ducking under him, he felt Shrewpaw writhe on his shoulders before tumbling to the ground. Tallpaw dropped and rolled in the other direction, scrambling to his paws in time to face Shrewpaw as the young Tom jumped up. "That was a coward's move," Shrewpaw growled, just loud enough for Tallpaw to hear. "Really?" Tallpaw spat. "It must be one you taught me." Shrewpaw curled his lip. "I'm going to take a piece of your ear back to camp for that." I'd like to see you try!" Tallpaw lunged at Shrewpaw, turning on his forepaws and swinging his hind legs around. He kicked out and sent Shrewpaw staggering backward, but Shrewpaw recovered quickly and lunged at him. Tallpaw swallowed back a yelp as claws stabbed his flank. Teeth gripped his hind leg and jerked it from under him. As Tallpaw hit the ground with a thump, Shrewpaw leaped on him. Pain flared white-hot along Tallpaw's spine as Shrewpaw pushed his muzzle and churned his hind claws against his back. Couldn't Dawnstripe see what was going on? Tallpaw pushed the thought away. He didn't want Dawnstripe rushing to his rescue as if he were a kid. He twisted his head and clamped his jaws around Shrewpaw's foreleg, just hard enough to get a grip, careful not to draw blood. "Don't you know any warrior moves?" Shrewpaw snarled. "I fought better when I was a kid. No wonder you couldn't save your father." Fury roared through Tallpaw, stripping sense from his thoughts like wind tearing up heather. Without thinking, he unsheathed his claws and bit down on Shrewpaw's foreleg so hard he tasted the young Tom's blood. Shrewpaw screeched and dragged himself free. Tallpaw plunged after him, grabbing him with outstretched claws and hauled him back. Flinging him to the ground, he slammed his hind legs into Shrewpaw's belly and began battering him with blows that sent fur flying across the grass. The heather swam at the edge of Tallpaw's vision, and the dark shape of Shrewpaw seemed to fade beneath him. In its place, Tallpaw saw the short, brown pelt of Sparrow. "You!" He dragged the rogue onto his side, dripping blood from his scratched muzzle into the rogue's dark, expressionless face. "You deserve to die!" "Tallpaw!" Dawnstripe's yowl seemed to come from far away. The tug of her teeth in Tallpaw's scruff startled him. He felt himself being yanked back, clear off his paws. Hairflight lunged in front of him, shielding Shrewpaw. "What in StarClan's name are you doing?" The brown warrior stared at him, horror widening his eyes. Tallpaw blinked. Shrewpaw was trembling, bloody and tattered, on the ground beside his mentor. "What have I done?" Chapter 23. Dawnstripe glared at Tallpaw, her pelt spiked with rage. "No claws, remember?" Tallpaw stared back, shock pulsing through him. "I'm sorry." Beside him, Hairflight checked Shrewpaw's wounds. Shrewpaw squirmed away from his mentor. "I'm okay," he insisted. "He doesn't want to admit that I nearly shredded him." Tallpaw winced as he recalled the fury that had driven him on. How far would I have gone if Dawnstripe hadn't stopped me? Dawnstripe smoothed her chest fur with a couple of licks. "It's been a stressful day," she meowed. "You just got carried away." Hairflight eyed Tallpaw warily. "I guess." "Sure." Shrewpaw nodded as he shook out his pelt, hiding his scratches. "It won't happen again," Tallpaw promised, but inside he felt a stab of panic. Would he fail his assessment because of this? He could have killed Shrewpaw because he'd lost control of his rage. "I don't deserve to pass the assessment." His pelt pricked with shame. True warriors don't hurt their clanmates. Dawnstripe headed into the heather. "Let's get back to camp." Tallpaw trailed behind his clanmates, dreading what Dawnstripe would have to tell Heatherstar. Dowspring and Stagleap were just leaving the camp as they reached the clearing outside. Stagleap lifted his tail excitedly. "How did the assessment go?" Dowspring's eyes widened as she saw Shrewpaw's bloody nose. What happened to you? Hairflight padded forward. Tallpaw forgot he was fighting a clanmate. Stagleap stared at the clumps of fur hanging from Shrewpaw's pelt. Did you think you were fighting a Shadow Clan patrol? Tallpaw looked at the ground, his pelt hot. Shrewpaw shrugged. You just got lucky with a few swipes. Go to Hawkheart, Hairflight told him. Get those scratches seen to while Dawnstripe and I speak with Heatherstar. Stagleap shot Tallpaw a questioning look, but Tallpaw wasn't about to tell him anything. I'm going to get a drink, he muttered, and followed the trail that skirted the camp wall to the spring. As he rounded the corner, he slowed. He could hear mews up ahead. 2 cats were already beside the water. Are you sure? Tallpaw recognized Woollytail's rasping mew. Palebird answered him. Yes, in 2 moons' time. Tallpaw pricked his ears. What about Tallpaw? Palebird meowed. We should tell him first. Of course, Woollytail answered. He'll be pleased. It's been a hard green leaf for all of us. This will cheer him up. Tallpaw's pelt pricked uneasily. What will cheer me up? Palebird lowered her voice. I think I should tell him by myself. Tallpaw brushed past the heather and faced his mother. Tell me what? Tallpaw! Palebird's eyes brightened. I have good news. Why is Woollytail looking so worried then? Palebird gazed fondly at Woollytail. I'm expecting kits. Tallpaw glared at him. Yours? The tunneler lifted his muzzle. Yes. You're going to be a brother at last, Palebird gushed. But what about Sandgorse? Tallpaw blinked at Woollytail. You were his friend. How can you? Sandgorse would be pleased, Woollytail cut him off. He wouldn't want to see Palebird grieving for the rest of her life. You should be pleased for your mother. Palebird's eyes shone. She hasn't been this happy for a long time, he went on. Tallpaw's heart twisted. Sandgorse and I couldn't make you happy, but Woollytail can. You'll still be her first kit, Woollytail told him gently. Did you really think you'd be her last? Tallpaw looked at the 2 cats. Woollytail's eyes begged him to understand, while Palebird seemed oblivious that she'd caused him any pain. Whatever makes her happy, he growled, turning away. Mouth still dry and tasting of Shrewpaw's blood, he marched into camp. The meeting hollow was buzzing. Tallpaw's clanmates were streaming into it, their pelts ruffled with excitement. Cloudrunner looked over the rim. Hurry up, Tallpaw, or you'll miss your own naming ceremony. Aspenfall and Larksplash settled near the edge of the hollow. Mistmouse and Appledawn were discussing something animatedly, while Plumclaw, Hickorynose, and Meadowslip sat close together. Tallpaw realized that for the first time, tunnelers and moor-runners were sitting together. Hopkit, Sorrelkit, and Pigeonkit leaned over the edge. Why can't we sit next to you? Hopkit called to his mother. Meadowslip shooed them away with a jerk of her muzzle. Go and sit beside the nursery. You can see well enough from there. Heatherstar doesn't need kits under her paws. This is an important ceremony. Tallpaw spotted the clan leader standing in the middle of the hollow. Reedfeather stood a few paces behind, while Hairflight and Dawnstripe flanked him. Shrewpaw was with his father. Redclaw puffed his chest out proudly and glanced up at the pale sky. Was he wondering if Brackenwing was watching? Dawnstripe caught Tallpaw's eyes, beckoning him with a flick of her tail. Did this mean he'd passed his assessment? Her eyes shone, and she gave him a tiny nod. He'd passed. Tallpaw stared numbly back at her. Palebird had found a new family to replace her old one. What did it matter if he had a warrior name? She would have a litter of kits to look after soon. They'd make her happier than he ever had. "Come on, Tallpaw." Woollytail padded up behind him and nudged him forward. Beside him, Palebird purred. "Your naming ceremony, so much good news in one day." Tallpaw narrowed his eyes. "For you, maybe." He padded across the tussocks and slid down into the hollow. Heatherstar dipped her head. "Leaf Bear is coming, but we will face it with 2 new warriors." She looked at Shrewpaw. "Your warrior name will be Shrewclaw, in honor of your skill at hunting and fighting. You have trained well and are worthy of your warrior name." Shrewclaw fluffed out his tail and purred. "Tallpaw." Heatherstar's eyes glowed as she gazed at him. Tallpaw shifted his paws. "Your father always meant to name you for your long tail, and so I give you your warrior name in honor of him. Talltail, one day you will be a greater warrior than even you can imagine. Sandgorse would be proud of you." Talltail stared at his leader. He should have felt happy, but the numbness wouldn't shift. Instead, it wrapped itself tighter around his heart. Heatherstar held his gaze, her eyes searching his as if she was trying to tell him something. Is she just being kind because she knows I don't fit in? Around him, the air filled with the calls of his clanmates. "Talltail! Shrewclaw!" They lifted their voices to the afternoon sky, celebrating WindClan's newest warriors. Talltail glanced over his shoulder at Palebird. She was pressed against Woollytail, her eyes bright. Talltail swallowed back the sadness welling in his throat. Is she proud of me, or just happy about the kits? Surrounded by his clanmates cheering his name, he had never felt more alone. The stars shimmered in a peat-black sky. Perched on the edge of Outlook Rock, Talltail gazed beyond the mountain peaks that edged the horizon like jagged teeth. What lay beyond? Had any cat traveled that far? His breath billowed in front of him, the stone slab cold beneath his paws. The chilly leaf fall night carried the distant scent of a leaf-bare frost. He was sitting vigil with Shrewclaw, their first night as warriors. As a fox barked far below, an owl flapped up from a distant tree. Talltail pricked his ears to see if he could hear the beat of its wings on the crystal air. A light twinkled in Two-Leg Place, catching Talltail's eye. Did a kitty pet live trapped inside those walls? Snug and warm, blissfully unaware of the warriors on the moor? How many lives were being lived out there, beyond his view? Talltail's thoughts drifted to Sparrow and the other visitors. Had they passed that two-leg nest? Perhaps that's where they holed up for the winter. Maybe they were kitty pets in Leaf Bear, just playing at being rogues when the warm weather came. He shifted his paws, trying to ease the stiffness in his legs. "Too cold for you up here?" Shrewclaw whispered. "You could go hide in a tunnel. I won't tell." "Sure you wouldn't." Talltail twitched the tip of his tail with irritation. Was Shrewclaw going to keep on taunting him now they were warriors? He slid a look at his denmate. "Don't you get bored of throwing the same old insults?" "Not at you." "We're not supposed to be talking." Talltail watched a wisp of cloud drift over the moon. "StarClan won't approve." "They probably don't approve anyway," Shrewpaw hissed. "You don't deserve your warrior name after fighting like that in the assessment." "You were the first to unsheathe your claws." "That was just to give it a bit of edge," Shrewclaw snapped. I wasn't trying to rip your pelt off." A growl rumbled in his throat. "You caught me by surprise. Next time, I'll shred you." "There won't be a next time." Heather Star's mew made Talltail jump. He turned and saw her purple gaze blinking from the shadowy grass. She padded onto the rock. "You do know that you shouldn't be speaking at all, let alone threatening each other?" Her gaze flicked from Talltail to Shrew-Claw. Talltail squirmed, feeling like a scolded kid. "Sorry, Heather Star." "Talltail started it," Shrew-Claw muttered. Heather Star silenced him with a look. "I just wanted to check on my newest warriors." Her gaze slid past Talltail to the starlit view beyond. "How's the valley tonight?" "Chilly," Shrew-Claw told her. Talltail looked out beyond high stones. "Endless," he whispered, letting a note of longing creep into his voice. Heather Star's eyes glittered for a moment. Then she turned away. "Stay silent," she reminded them as she padded onto the grass. "StarClan is watching." Talltail stifled a yawn. The sky beyond ThunderClan territory was beginning to lighten at last. Shrew-Claw's head was drooping beside him. Talltail flicked him with his tail. Shrew-Claw jerked up his head. "What?" "It's nearly dawn," Talltail hissed. "I knew that," Shrew-Claw grunted. Talltail stared out from the rock, watching the valley wake. Monsters began to roar along the thunder path. In the two-leg den far below, a dog barked insistently until the two-leg barked back, and the dog fell silent. The meadows and copses stirred into life as dawn turned the moon-drenched leaves from silver to green, and finally the sun lifted its head over the forest and set high stones alight. Talltail heard paw steps brushing the grass behind. He tasted the air before he turned. Reed Feather. "You're still awake." Reed Feather sounded pleased. Talltail stretched, arching his spine until his tail quivered. He straightened and shook the damp morning chill from his fur. Beside him, Shrew-Claw yawned. "I'm glad I got my warrior name before Leaf Bear," he meowed. "I'd have frozen to death sitting out here all night." "Would a little hunting warm you up?" Reed Feather offered. Shrew-Claw blinked. "Now?" "Sounds like a good idea to me." Talltail padded off the rock. He needed to stretch his legs, and he was as hungry as a fox. The heather rustled as Dowspring and Aspenfall appeared. "They're awake!" Aspenfall called. "Of course!" Shrew-Claw bounded off the stone slab beside Talltail. "You must be frozen," meowed Dowspring. She sniffed Shrew-Claw's dew-specked pelt. "And tired." "Not too tired to hunt," Reed Feather meowed. "They're joining our patrol. They can rest afterward." Talltail tasted the air. "Where are we hunting?" Reed Feather nodded toward a patch of heather that caught the first rays of sunlight on the hillside below. "Prey will be waking early there." He trotted down toward it, Aspenfall at his side. Shrew-Claw ran to catch up, while Dowspring fell in beside Talltail. "Isn't it great about Palebird's kits?" she purred. "Any excuse to stay in the nursery," Talltail grunted. Dowspring stared at him. "Aren't you pleased?" she meowed. "They'll be your kin." "Yeah." Talltail kept his eyes on the patrol ahead. "When did you turn so selfish, Talltail?" Dowspring protested. "Palebird's lost so much. You should be pleased for her." "Should I?" Talltail stopped dead and curled his claws into the grass. "I'm a warrior now. I can have my own opinion. Palebird should have stayed faithful to Sandgorse. It's only been a few moons since the accident. Anyone would think she's glad he's gone so she can have Woollytail as her mate." Dowspring's tail twitched. You think too much about yourself and not enough about your clan, Talltail. She narrowed her eyes. You say you're old enough to have your own opinion, but you're also old enough to understand that loyalty to your clan is more important than anything. Palebird is happy. So's Woollytail. It's great news that there'll be more kits in Wind Clan. You're the only one who's not pleased. Before he could argue, she broke into a run. I'll race you to the warren, she called to the cats ahead as she hared past them. They charged after her. Shrew-Claw veered toward the heather, nose twitching. Rabbit scent! Dowspring swung around and gave chase with Aspenfall and Reedfeather on her tail. Talltail watched them plunge into the bushes. He didn't want to follow. He'd rather hunt alone, with no one telling him how he should feel. He tasted the air as he headed for the moor-top. A rabbit had definitely passed this way not long ago. Talltail padded forward, stepping lightly over the grass. Low, grassy lumps covered the ridge ahead of him. Burrows. He dropped into a crouch and began to stalk, belly to the ground. Something twitched at the edge of his vision. He turned slowly and saw a pair of long, brown ears sticking above the grass. Rabbit. Talltail held his breath. The rabbit bent its head to graze. Talltail crept closer, low as a snake through the grass. He could hear the rabbit munching. In the distance, the heather rustled as his clanmates crashed through it. Can't they hunt quietly? Eyes fixed on his quarry, Talltail leaped. The rabbit raced away, its fierce scent filling the air. Talltail hurtled after it. Now the creature was less than a tail length away. Timing his strides to match the rabbit's, Talltail pounced. Got you! His heart sank as his paws hit bare grass. Where are you? He whirled around, spotting a burrow that reeked of fear scent. You can't hide in there. Talltail plunged into the darkness. Tiny paws scrabbled a fox length ahead of him. Reaching forward, he grabbed the rabbit's fluffy haunches before it could disappear into the maze of tunnels. It squealed as Talltail hauled it out and nipped it quickly with a killing bite. As he sat up, the scent of blood and fresh earth filled his nose, blotting out all the other scents of the moor. What in the name of StarClan are you doing? Came a disbelieving voice. Aspenfall was standing at the edge of the heather. Talltail nudged the rabbit with a paw. Hunting. He spat out a tuft of fur. We don't hunt underground anymore, remember? Aspenfall looked round-eyed with concern. Heatherstar said it wasn't safe. I was chasing it from the ridge over there, Talltail explained, pointing with his tail. He felt hot underneath his pelt. Why was Aspenfall questioning his catch? Had he forgotten that Talltail was a warrior now, just like him? Well, the tunnels are forbidden now, Aspenfall meowed. Shrew-Claw slid out of the heather behind the gray and white warrior. Has Wormcat been digging tunnels? Anger surged through Talltail. He kicked the rabbit toward his clanmate. No, I've been catching prey. Aspenfall took a step forward. Calm down, Talltail. It's going to be hard for all of us to remember that we don't have the tunnels to hunt in. Come on, let's get that rabbit back to camp. Talltail picked up the fresh kill and clamped it hard between his jaws to stop himself from responding to any more of Shrew-Claw's barbed comments. I'm a warrior now, he told himself. Things have changed from when we were apprentices. The rabbit bounced heavily against his front legs, making him stumble. So many things had changed, in fact, from Palebird expecting Woollytail's kits to the tunnels being shut down forever, that Talltail hardly recognized Wind Clan at all. Chapter 24. Talltail sat stiffly in his nest. Through its thick wool lining, he could feel the moor ring with ice. Every paw step, every clattering sheep hoof shivered through the frozen earth. His breath billowed up into the clear black sky as he peered over the frost-wilted grass that edged the moor runners' nests. Even without the tunnels in use, the warriors still slept in 2 groups, preferring to keep their own nests for now. But when the next litter of kits passed their final assessment, would they share a single sleeping area? Talltail pricked his ears, straining to hear the noises from the nursery. Stagleap was fast asleep in the nest beside him. Cloudrunner and Appledon snored muzzle to muzzle, but Redclaw, Larksplash, and Dawnstripe were sitting up like Talltail, listening as another moan rose from beyond the thick gorse walls of the nursery. Woollytail paced anxiously outside with Hickory Nose next to him. Mistmouse and Plumclaw huddled at the rim of the meeting hollow. "She'll be fine," Plumclaw reassured Woollytail as he passed. Woollytail grunted, the fur rippling along his spine. "Hawkheart's with her," Mistmouse soothed. "He's done this countless times." Hopkit, his black fur sticking up in tufts, scrambled from the elder's den, where he'd been sent with Pigeonkit, Sorrelkit, and Meadowslip to wait out Palebird's kidding. "Are they here yet?" Sorrelkit pushed past her brother. "Hawkheart's still in there, Rabbit Brain. Of course they're not here yet." Talltail jumped out of his nest. He knew he wouldn't get back to sleep again. Palebird sounded like she was struggling, her groans growing more desperate. Talltail padded toward the elder's den and stopped beside Hopkit. "These things take time," he muttered, trying to reassure himself as much as the kit. Pigeonkit stuck his nose from the den entrance. The white patches on his pelt glowed against his dark gray fur in the moonlight. "Did Meadowslip make all that noise when she kidded us?" he mewed. Talltail's ear twitched as a low, agonized wail echoed across the clearing. "I can't remember," he lied. Meadowslip's kidding had been much quieter than this. Was something wrong? His paws pricked with worry. Meadowslip nudged Pigeonkit out of the way and padded out of the elder's den. "She's tougher than you think," she murmured to Talltail, gazing toward the nursery. Talltail tipped back his head and looked up at Silverpelt. The ancestors wouldn't let Palebird lose kits twice, would they? Lily-Whisker slid out behind Meadowslip. Her amber eyes shone in the moonlight. "The first one is always the hardest. Second kits come easier." Talltail stood and watched the nursery as Pigeonkit, Sorrelkit, and Hopkit weaved around him. "We won't be the youngest anymore," Hopkit mewed. "I can't wait to show the new kits around camp," Sorrelkit declared. "It'll be a few days before they're allowed out of the nursery," Meadowslip warned her. Pigeonkit flicked his tail in the air. "We can teach them how to play Rabbit Run." "And show them the hunting stones." Hopkit limped toward the smooth rocks and scrambled onto the highest one. Talltail remembered one of his earliest days outside the nursery, when Sandgorse had tried to teach him to dig. The memory sent a shiver along his spine. If only he hadn't fallen into that hole, he might have chosen to be a tunneler from the start. Everything might have been different. Sparrow would still have come. Talltail stiffened. He would still have persuaded Sandgorse to risk his life in the tunnels. The dark anger that lurked in the pit of his belly wormed up to his throat. Pigeonkit stared at him. "Why are you growling?" Talltail blinked. "I was just thinking about something else," he meowed quickly, shaking out his pelt. Barkpaw squeezed out of the nursery and followed the rim of the meeting hollow toward the medicine den. Talltail bounded toward him. "How is she?" he demanded, slithering to a stop on the frosty grass in front of the young Tom. "She's tired." Barkpaw's eyes were dark. Talltail's belly fluttered. "She will be okay, won't she?" "I can't make any promises." Barkpaw met his gaze. "But Hawkheart knows what he's doing. She's in good paws." As he hurried away toward the medicine den, Talltail glanced anxiously at the nursery. Rye-Stalk climbed out of her nest in the long grass and crunched across the clearing. "You were born on a night just like this, Talltail." She fluffed out her pelt. "How do you know?" He didn't look at her. "You were hardly more than a kit yourself." "I was young, but my eyes were open and my ears worked perfectly." Rye-Stalk flicked her tail. "You were a squealer. Stagleap picked you up and put you outside the den one night just so he could get some sleep." Her eyes flashed as if she expected him to purr with amusement. When he didn't, she went on. "Sandgorse heard you and took you straight back in. Poor Stagleap got an ear chewing for being so rabbit-brained." The entrance to the medicine den rattled. Barkpaw scurried out with a wad of leaves in his mouth. Talltail wrinkled his nose at the sharp herb tang as the apprentice trotted past. "Palebird's lucky to have 2 medicine cats to look after her," Rye-Stalk meowed. "She'll get through this, Talltail." As Barkpaw pushed his way back into the nursery, a shrill, puny mew sounded through the gorse wall. Rye-Stalk's eyes lit up. "That's the first one!" Hawkheart stuck his head out. "Come in, Woollytail. Meet your first kit." Woollytail stared at the medicine cat like he'd just been dropped on the thunder path and a monster was headed for him. Hickory Nose nudged him toward the gorse den. "Go on," he urged. "I won't know what to do," Woollytail whispered. "Just welcome your new kits to WindClan. You'll be fine." Hickory Nose walked his friend closer to the entrance and watched the tunneler squeeze through the thorny entrance. Palebird shrieked. Talltail's heart lurched. A tiny mewling drifted from the nursery. Then there was silence. Talltail held his breath. He heard fur swishing inside. Hawkheart was murmuring to Barkpaw. Woollytail's strained mew was quickly hushed. The tunneler slid out of the nursery, his eyes wide and glittering. Talltail rushed toward him, shouldering past Appledawn, Rye-Stalk, and Hickory Nose as they clustered around for news. "Is Palebird all right?" Talltail begged. "She's great." Woollytail met Talltail's gaze. "Come and meet your brothers and sisters." Weak with relief, Talltail followed Woollytail into the nursery. Barkpaw scooted to the edge to make room as they squeezed in. Hawkheart lifted his head from Palebird's nest. "She's very tired," he warned them. Just enough moonlight filtered through the gorse for Talltail to make out his mother sprawled in her nest, her pelt wet and ruffled, and her eyes glazed. 4 tiny shapes squirmed at her belly. Talltail crept closer, his nose wrinkling at the pungent scent of herbs and newborn kits. Woollytail crouched at Palebird's head and started licking her ears. Hawkheart stood up with a grunt and headed for the entrance. "She'll be back on her feet in a day or 2, he pronounced. "Don't keep her awake too long." Palebird stared at him in dismay. "You can't leave. How am I going to feed all these kids? There are so many." "There are only 4, and they'll do the work," Hawkheart told her briskly. "You just have to lie still." "What if I don't have enough milk?" "Of course you will." Hawkheart slid from the den. "Come on, Barkpaw." He meowed over his shoulder. "Palebird can manage without us now." Palebird gazed up at Woollytail with anxious eyes. "Will I really be able to look after them?" "Of course." Woollytail lapped her cheek fondly. "You'll be a fine mother with these little ones, just like you were with Talltail." Talltail's heart felt as if something was squeezing. He gazed down at the kits, trying to make out one from another as they huddled together. "Have you named them?" "Not yet," Woollytail told him. "Palebird's too tired." The kits had better get used to that, Talltail thought bitterly. The smallest kit, a black Tom, his pelt still slick from his kidding, began to climb the side of the nest, hauling himself up with his tiny claws. Talltail reached in and grasped him gently by the scruff. "Stay warm, little one." He swung him toward Palebird's belly. "Careful!" she snapped. "You'll hurt him!" Stinging as though Palebird had raked his muzzle, Talltail laid the kit beside his littermates. He backed away. "I was just helping." Grief hollowed his belly as he slid from the den. Barkpaw was waiting outside. "They're perfectly healthy," he meowed, as if he thought Talltail was still concerned. "Good." Talltail headed for the entrance, his heart aching. "Where are we going?" "We?" Talltail glanced at his friend. It felt like a long time since Talltail had heard Barkpaw say "we." "I'm going to feel the wind in my fur." He fixed his eyes on the gap in the heather. "Do you want to come with me?" He braced himself for Barkpaw to make excuses and return to his den. "You must be tired," Talltail prompted. The moon was sinking, which meant dawn was close, but there was time for Barkpaw to rest before his morning duties. "Hawkheart probably has a busy day planned for you." "I don't feel like sleeping yet," Barkpaw told him. "That was my first kidding." He ducked through the entrance first. Talltail followed, and they began to climb the slope, following the trail around the heather. "Is Palebird really okay?" Talltail meowed in a rush. "Really?" Barkpaw's pelt brushed his as they climbed. She looked tired. "It was a hard kidding." "None of them died, though." Talltail thought of Finchkit. "They're survivors like you," Barkpaw purred. They walked in silence for a while. Talltail gently steered his friend toward Outlook Rock. "I love this view," he mewed as he led Barkpaw out across the stone. Barkpaw peered into the night-shadowed valley. "Why? Everything is so dark and far away." Talltail sat down, beckoning Barkpaw to sit beside him with a flick of his tail. "Just wait." "For what?" The sky was growing pale as the sun pushed up toward the horizon behind them. Glancing over his shoulder, Talltail saw weak rays seeping through the bare branches of ThunderClan's forest. "You'll see in a moment," he told Barkpaw. As he spoke, the sun lifted above the trees. Sunlight swept the moor and lit up the tips of high stones. Barkpaw gasped. "I've never seen that." "Can you see the mountains behind?" Barkpaw narrowed his eyes. "There are mountains?" "And more land beyond them, probably," Talltail meowed, paws pricking. "Places no clan cat has ever seen." "Or will ever see," Barkpaw commented. Talltail turned. "Why not?" "Why would any cat trek that far from home? To see what was there?" Barkpaw shrugged. "I've been to the Moonstone, and that's far enough. There's plenty to see on the moor. I still haven't learned every herb that grows here." "Don't you want to find new herbs, growing in places other cats haven't been?" Barkpaw stared across the valley. "I couldn't possibly go wandering off. My clan needs me." Talltail shifted his paws. "I wish Wind Clan needed me." "Of course they do." Talltail shrugged. "I thought I could replace Sandgorse by becoming a tunneler," he murmured. "I thought they'd need me then." But Heatherstar said we didn't need tunnelers anymore. Now Pellbird has had Woollytail's kits, so she doesn't need me either." "She does," Barkpaw exclaimed, "and the kits will need you too." Talltail shook his head. "It's more than not being needed," he sighed. "That's just part of it." Barkpaw frowned. "What do you mean?" I can't help feeling that I have to find Sparrow." "Why?" Barkpaw's eyes went round with confusion. "He killed Sandgorse." Talltail searched his friend's gaze for some trace of understanding or sympathy. Didn't any of his clanmates realize what Sparrow had done? "But Sandgorse's death was an accident," Barkpaw meowed. "It wasn't Sparrow's fault." "Not Sparrow's fault?" Talltail's anger swelled until he felt it block his throat, choking his words. Why didn't anyone see that a rogue had caused the death of a clan cat and walked away unpunished? He glowered at the valley. "You're out there somewhere, I know." He pictured Sparrow stretching happily in a pool of dawn sunshine. "You think you can go unpunished forever, but I won't let that happen." Talltail's claws scraped the rock. "One day, you'll be sorry." Barkpaw followed his gaze. "Each cat has his own destiny to follow," he murmured, "and only StarClan knows where that leads." "What if it leads beyond the clan?" Talltail growled. Barkpaw's tail twitched. "Beyond the clan?" "What if my destiny is out there?" Talltail nodded toward the valley. "What if my destiny is to avenge Sandgorse's death?" "On your own?" "Yes." Talltail glared at the distant fields, scanning for brown pelts moving across the grass. "Do you want to be a rogue?" Barkpaw demanded. Shock edged his mew. "Of course not." How could Barkpaw be so narrow-minded? "Can I only be a warrior inside warrior territory?" Talltail turned his gaze on Barkpaw. "The warrior code must reach beyond borders, surely. Courage, honor, and loyalty don't end at a scent line." "You're just feeling unsettled because of the kits." Barkpaw climbed to his paws and stretched. "Once you've gotten to know them, you'll feel differently. There's room for all of you in the clan, you know." "Maybe." Talltail watched Barkpaw pad toward the grass, "but I doubt it." "I'd better get back," Barkpaw called over his shoulder. "Hawkheart will be looking for me." Talltail turned his gaze back toward the valley. "Where does my path lead?" He glanced at the sky. "Are you going to tell me, StarClan?" His heart sank when there was nothing but silence, no change in the shape of the clouds overhead or in the sound of the wind. But his warrior ancestors hadn't shared with him at the Moonstone. Why would they guide him now? Perhaps even StarClan didn't know what lay ahead for him. A bird called from the valley. Another answered it. Talltail tipped his head on one side to listen. Those birds weren't troubled by the idea of dead birds watching them, making decisions on their behalf. Why should he wait for his ancestors to make up their minds? "I choose my own destiny. Nothing can stop me, not even StarClan." Chapter 25. Talltail hopped from his nest, ready for the dawn hunting patrol. Stagleap and Shrewclaw were still snoring, not even stirring as he picked his way between their nests. They must have returned late from last night's gathering. Talltail had slept through their return. Why wait up and hear news they'd be sharing all day anyway? He padded out of the long grass. Freezing fog filled the camp. Dawnlight seeped through the mist as Talltail sniffed at a frosty mouse. It was all that was left of the prey heap pile. He picked it up and carried it to the nursery, thrusting it through the entrance to give it a chance to thaw. It should be soft by the time that Palebird, Meadowslip, and their kits woke. It had been a quarter moon since Palebird had kitted Wren Kit, Bristle Kit, Rabbit Kit, and Fly Kit. Talltail was proud of them. They had already explored the whole camp, asking questions, begging for badger rides, and getting under everyone's paws. As he leaned into the nursery now, Palebird lifted her head sleepily and peered through the half-light. "Is that you, Talltail?" "Yes. Do you need something?" Talltail pricked his ears. "Go away," Palebird grunted. "You're disturbing everyone. The kits kept us awake half the night because you made them so excited about the gathering." As Talltail ducked out of the den, a gorse thorn stabbed his ear. It stung less than Palebird's words. Appledon was stretching his spine at the edge of the long grass where the warriors slept. Hairflight stood yawning at the rim of the meeting hollow, while Cloud Runner sniffed the empty patch where the prey heap should have been. Cloud Runner lifted his head. "It looks like we've got some hunting to do," he commented. "I'm ready." Talltail flexed his claws. Appledon headed for the entrance, Hairflight at her side. Cloud Runner raced past them and led them out of camp. Talltail felt their paw steps ringing through the ice-bound earth. He gave chase, catching up on the grass clearing outside. He stopped and scanned the moor. "Which way?" "There'll be prey near 4 trees," Cloud Runner guessed. "Anywhere close to the woods when it's this cold." The pale gray tom crashed away through the frost-whitened heather. Talltail veered around the bushes, running hard so that he was ahead of the patrol when they broke from the other side. He heard their paws thrumming behind him and pushed harder. "Why don't you hunt down by the River Clan border?" Cloud Runner panted when he caught up to Talltail at the edge of the trees. "Hairflight and I will search the brambles." He glanced at Hairflight as the brown tom slithered to a halt, narrowly missing getting poked in the eye by a branch. Appledon pulled up behind him, her flanks heaving. "It's a bit early for a race," she panted. Cloud Runner nodded to her. "You can hunt the River Clan border with Talltail." He nodded toward the scrubby hillside that linked the woods above 4 trees to the river. Suddenly, the warrior's eyes narrowed. Talltail jerked around, following his gaze. 2 dark pelts were weaving between the bushes just below the border with River Clan. "The river must be frozen if they're hunting on land," Hairflight meowed. "They won't like eating mice instead of fish." "They didn't mention it at the gathering," Cloud Runner growled. Talltail snorted. "Of course not. Clans don't admit when they're starving, remember?" He quoted the warrior's words back at him. Cloud Runner's pelt rippled. "Just keep your eyes open. Hungry clans cross borders." "Of course they do, otherwise they'd starve." Talltail headed downhill, Appledon hurrying to keep up. "I hope we get a rabbit," she meowed. "I'm starving." "If we could use the tunnels, we'd find plenty," Talltail muttered. Bushes dotted the slope as it flattened toward the River Clan scent line. The soil felt crumbly beneath Talltail's paws, sandy enough to resist freezing even after several dawns of frost. This area was popular with rabbits because it was easy to dig at the height of leaf bare, though the burrows became unstable in warmer weather. "We might as well remark the border while we're here." Appledon padded toward a bramble spilling over the grass and brushed past it. Talltail headed for a clump of ferns farther along. As he marked the icy fronds, he felt the earth tremble. Paw steps were heading this way. Talltail pricked his ears and let the fur lift along his spine. Something was running at full pelt, not even slowing as it approached the scent line. The ferns swished, and a rabbit hared out past his nose. A she-cat exploded after it with a tom at her heels. River clan scent bathed Talltale's tongue. He recognized the ginger and white pelt of Night Sky as she streaked after the rabbit. Pike-tooth raced after her, ears flat, eyes wide. Talltale watched, rooted to the spot with surprise. The rabbit veered across the slope, and Pike-tooth peeled away, picking up speed as he hit the open grass of Wind Clan territory. He outflanked the rabbit and drove it back toward Night Sky. Eyes gleaming, she pounced, killing it with a sharp nip to the spine. "Why are you standing here like a lump?" Appledon's hiss sounded in Talltale's ear. "They're on our territory!" She darted forward. Talltale followed and quickly overtook her, slowing as he neared the River Clan cats. They spun around, bristling. Night Sky stood in front of her catch. Pike-tooth showed his teeth. Talltale scrambled to a halt, blocking them from Appledon's line of sight. The River Clan cats looked lean and hungry, their pelts dull. "Quick!" Talltale hissed to Night Sky. "Take the rabbit and get back to your own territory." The River Clan she-cat stared at him. "Hurry!" Talltale hissed. He could hear Appledon racing up behind him. Night Sky grabbed the rabbit and fled back to the border. Pike-tooth tore after her, flashing a shocked look at Talltale as he passed. "What in the name of Star Clan are you doing?" Appledon gasped, skidding to a stop beside Talltale. "I tried to stop them," Talltale meowed, "but they were too quick for me. They must be starving." "We'll be starving if you give away all our prey," Appledon spat. Fur flashed at the edge of Talltale's vision. Hairflight and Cloud Runner were running down the slope. On the other side of the border, Talltale was relieved to see Night Sky and Pike-tooth disappear into the ferns. Cloud Runner pulled up beside Appledon. "What happened?" "Talltale just let a River Clan hunting patrol steal our prey," Appledon snarled. Talltale bristled. "It was their prey. It came from their territory." Appledon lashed her tail. "Once it crosses the border, it's our prey." Cloud Runner faced Talltale. "Is this true?" "They took their prey back over the border, yes." Talltale lifted his chin. "You let them kill it on our land, though," Appledon put in. "They killed the rabbit before I reached them, and they're clearly starving." Talltale couldn't understand why his clanmates were so unforgiving. Are we supposed to want other clans to starve? Is that what warriors do? Hairflight stepped forward. "We take care of our own clan first." He glanced up the slope toward camp. "We have hungry cats too." "Then let's hunt," Talltale meowed lightly. "We haven't lost a rabbit. We've just seen one cross the border and go back again. Come on, let's check out that gorse over there." "Your clanmates aren't happy with you." Heatherstar sat at the back of her den, half hidden in shadow. Talltale stood in front of her, feeling slightly baffled. Why was everyone making such a fuss about the River Clan rabbit? It was prey from their territory. He was tired of explaining. "So you keep saying." Heatherstar sighed. "But we have to feed our own clan first." "They flushed it out," Talltale reasoned. "It never would have run into our territory if River Clan hadn't chased it there." Heatherstar leaned forward. "What's wrong, Talltale?" Her eyes were round with curiosity. Talltale's fur pricked along his spine. "Why does there have to be anything wrong?" "I know you've had a hard time." Heatherstar's mew was sympathetic. "Palebird never got over Finchkit." "She got over her enough to start a new family with Woollytail," Talltale muttered. Heatherstar blinked. "Losing Sandgorse was a shock for you, I know. And I'm sorry you weren't able to follow in his paw steps, but I had to think of the whole clan. Heatherstar took a breath. If there's ever anything you want to talk about, I want you to know you can come and talk to me. Or Dawnstripe. She frowned. I worry that you hold back from your clanmates. You keep too much to yourself. Being part of a clan means sharing in all things. Talltail flicked his tail, feeling more and more uncomfortable. May I go now, please? Heatherstar nodded. Of course. But remember, you can always talk to me. Thanks. Talltail turned and headed out of the den. Barkface, who had been given his medicine cat name just a few days before, was waiting for him in the clearing. I have to talk to you, he hissed urgently. What about? Just wait. Barkface led him to the spring outside the camp wall and stopped in the clearing. The water bubbled beside their paws, lapping over the rim of ice around the edge of the little pool. Do you remember what you said at Outlook Rock? He faced Talltail with his ears pricked. After Palebird kidded, you asked what would happen if your destiny led you beyond the clan, Barkface prompted. Talltail nodded. So? You said that it was possible to be a warrior even beyond clan borders. I still believe that, Barkface went on. You wanted to find out what was out there. Talltail's paws pricked with impatience. Why are we going over this again? I was out on the moor at sunrise, Barkface mewed in a rush. I was picking sheep sorrel to ease Flailfoot's fever, and I found a tuft of black and white fur. Talltail stared at him. How's that important? You're black and white. Are you saying you found my fur? Talltail looked along his flank. I don't think I've lost any. No! Barkface leaped up the ridge of earth above the spring and paced along the top. Don't you see? It was a sign. A sign? Talltail was confused. As I held it up and looked at it, the wind whisked it from my paw and carried it over the moor like a puff of smoke. It just vanished. Talltail frowned. What are you trying to say, that I'm about to vanish? Anxiety began to worm in his belly. Barkface was quivering. I just know it means something. It felt important, like StarClan had sent it. And after what you said about your destiny leading you outside the clan, well, maybe you were right. Maybe this was StarClan's way of saying they agree. You think StarClan wants me to leave? Talltail felt cold. Was that why they hadn't shared dreams with him at the Moonstone? Do you think I should? His throat tightened. No! Barkface scrambled down the bank and stopped a whisker from Talltail's muzzle. Of course you don't have to. But if you truly believe that your destiny lies beyond our borders, I think StarClan wants you to follow it. Talltail saw his friend's eyes glow with conviction. He just wants me to be happy. Slowly he nodded. Thanks for telling me, Barkface. He climbed up the bank and padded over the grass. I'll have to think about it. Do what you feel is right, Talltail, Barkface called after him. Talltail lifted his muzzle and gazed toward the moor top. He could picture the valley beyond as easily as if it were the Wind Clan camp. He'd memorized the fields, the roll of the hills, the tracks left by rivers and thunder paths on the countless patrols he'd spent on Outlook Rock. He could picture it just as Sandgorse could picture the tunnels running below the moor. His paws itched with sudden excitement. He belonged out there, and StarClan agreed. His destiny was to leave his territory and track down the cat who'd killed his father. He saw it clearly now. His clanmates didn't think Sparrow had done anything wrong, but StarClan understood. They were telling him to avenge Sandgorse's death. Energy surged beneath his pelt. I have to leave the moor. My destiny lies beyond the clans. Chapter 26. Talltail hurried back to the camp. He had to tell Heatherstar. He should leave as soon as he could. That's why the weather had been so cold and dry. StarClan must be preserving Sparrow's scent trail for me to follow. Talltail! Talltail! As he crossed the tussocks, Rabbit-Kit, Fly-Kit, Wren-Kit, and Bristle-Kit came tearing toward him. He hopped clear as they swarmed around his legs. I can't play now, he told them briskly. I have to speak with Heatherstar. Bristle-Kit stared at him with round eyes. But you just spoke with her. Wren-Kit glanced over her shoulder. She's busy. The Wind Clan leader was with Reedfeather in the meeting hollow. The two cats sat, heads close, deep in conversation. She won't be too busy for this. Talltail tried to move forward, but Rabbit-Kit clung to his leg. Give us a badger ride, she squeaked. Cloudrunner says we're too big now. Talltail felt a pang as he met the young cat's gaze. He would miss his half-sister growing up. He'd never even know her warrior name. Okay, he conceded and crouched down. Before he had time to protest, all 4 kits had scrambled onto his back. They clung to his fur with thorn-sharp claws. Lily-Whisker purred outside the elder's den. Come and see this, Flailfoot. Talltail's bringing us some prey. No, he's not! Flykit wriggled on Talltail's back. Talltail's whiskers twitched. Yes, I am. I'm going to feed you to Lily-Whisker and Flailfoot. Elders love the taste of fresh kit. No, no! Flykit squealed in horror. I want to get down! Stomping his paws like a badger, Talltail carried the kits toward the elders. Lily-Whisker licked her lips. You're just in time, Talltail. I'm getting hungry. No! Flykit squealed. Don't be silly, Wren-Kit chided. Of course they won't eat us. But what if they did? Talltail felt Flykit scrabble along his spine. It's okay, Flykit. He stopped beside Lily-Whisker. We're just pulling your tail. Lily-Whisker reached forward and swung Flykit off Talltail's back by his snowy scruff. Talltail hunkered down and let the others scramble off. He watched as the kits swarmed over Flailfoot, his heart aching at the sight of the kits and elders. There was so much he would miss, and yet his destiny lay elsewhere, with revenge for his father's death. And then what? Talltail pictured the mountains beyond Highstones. There was so much to discover out there, enough to fill countless lifetimes. Lily-Whisker. He dipped his head solemnly to the elder. Thank you for your kindness these past moons. The old cat blinked in surprise. Okay. She looked as if she was about to question him, so Talltail backed away. I have to speak with Heatherstar, he meowed. He turned and trotted over to the meeting hollow. Heatherstar, can we talk? She looked up, her eyes darkening, and nodded to Reedfeather. We can continue this later, she murmured to her deputy, and leaped out of the hollow. Follow me, Talltail. He followed her to her den, sliding into its shadow for the second time that day. I have to leave WindClan. He blurted out the words before Heatherstar had even sat down. Leave WindClan? She repeated his words almost absently, her gaze wandering as though she was remembering something from a long time ago. Okay, she murmured at last. Wasn't she going to ask him why? Sparrow was never punished for killing Sandgorse, he told her bluntly. I have to find him and make him pay for what he did. And that's why you're leaving, Heatherstar curled her tail over her paws. Couldn't you wait for him to return next Greenleaf and punish him then? Talltail shifted his paws. Why was she being so calm? He was going to leave WindClan. There's more to it than that, he admitted. I want to see what lies beyond the clans. Don't you? Heatherstar shook her head. The clan has always been as much as I need. But my clanmates don't understand me. Some of them don't even like me. You could change that, she meowed softly. They respect you, but they can sense your anger and unhappiness. It makes their pelts prick. That's why I need to go, Talltail confessed. I feel trapped here. Thoughts of tunnels, roaring water, and pressing earth swamped him. He struggled to catch his breath. I need fresh wind in my pelt. You feel trapped by your home? Heatherstar tipped her head questioningly. Are we trapped by the sky or the earth? She asked. Are we trapped because we need prey to live, or water to drink, or air to breathe? We depend on all these things, but they don't make us feel trapped. Her eyes burned in the darkness. Can you imagine what your life will be like without the protection of your clan? You will have to hunt for yourself, heal yourself if you get hurt. There will be no one to share your victories or your defeats. Talltail's ears twitched. But I will be free. You will be free to discover where your heart truly lies. Heatherstar's mew was barely a whisper. She seemed to be talking to herself. Talltail leaned closer. Barkface had a sign from StarClan. Barkface is a talented young medicine cat. Heatherstar's eyes sparked. But it is Hawkheart who reads signs from StarClan. The sign said I should leave. A cat decides his own path. Don't we have to do what StarClan tells us? Heatherstar purred. Our ancestors were all cats like us once. They know we shape our own destinies. Talltail's fur tingled. I'm leaving, he meowed. Now. I understand. Heatherstar sighed and stood up. I know there is nothing I can say to change your mind. But say farewell to your clan first. Do I have to? Talltail swallowed. He didn't need to explain himself. He only needed to tell them what he planned to do. He followed Heatherstar out of the den, around the rim of the hollow, and stopped beside her at the head of the grassy clearing. WindClan! Heatherstar beckoned her clanmates forward with a flick of her tail. Talltail has something to say. Aspenfall padded from the prey heap pile. Cloudrunner got to his paws and crossed the tussocks. Hareflight and Shrewclaw fell in beside him. Mistmouse and Hickory Nose climbed from their nests in the bracken patch. Woollytail nearly tripped over Hopkit, Sorrelkit, and Pigeonkit as they dashed ahead of Meadowslip and barged past their clanmates. Redclaw halted as the kits bounced past him. Watch out! Wrenkit scrambled over the bumpy clearing with Bristlekit and Flykit at her heels. They crowded around Palebird as she padded out of the nursery. What does Talltail want? Flykit asked his mother anxiously. Palebird stooped to smooth the white fur between his ears with her tongue. I don't know. Lily-Whisker, Flailfoot, and Flamepelt padded from the Elder's Den, eyes sparking with curiosity, while Hawkheart ducked out of the medicine den. Do you know what this is about? He asked Barkface, who was just behind him. Barkface looked at his paws. Dawnstripe nosed past her clanmates. Talltail, what's happening? Talltail forced himself to take a deep breath, trying not to be alarmed by the faces staring expectantly at him. Did his clanmates care about him after all? "I'm leaving Wind Clan," he announced. "Leaving?" Dawnstripe's eyes stretched wide. "You can't!" "I have to." Talltail dipped his head. "I'm sorry, Dawnstripe. I know you hoped I'd be a great warrior one day, but my destiny lies somewhere beyond the clan." "Don't be such a rabbit brain," Woollytail stared at him, ears twitching. "This is your home." Talltail didn't want to get caught up in an argument. He pressed on. "Look after my mother, Woollytail." He glanced at Palebird. She'd turned her attention to Wrenkit and was washing her with brisk laps of her tongue. Meadowslip nudged her, and she looked up. "What?" "Talltail's leaving Wind Clan," Meadowslip told her. Palebird's gaze sharpened with surprise. "Leaving? But why?" Talltail glanced at Heatherstar. "Lots of reasons," he mewed. Heatherstar took a step forward. "None of us is a prisoner here. I would rather Talltail stayed, just as you all would, but I will not force him against his will. Our hearts and thoughts will travel with him." The cats stared at their leader in astonishment. Talltail realized they couldn't believe Heatherstar wasn't trying to stop him, reminding him of his loyalty to the clan and the warrior code, the moons of training he had gone through to become a warrior, the importance of strong young cats to catch prey and patrol borders on behalf of their clanmates. Talltail narrowed his eyes. Did Heatherstar want him to leave? Hairflight leaned forward and rested his muzzle against the top of Talltail's head. "In that case, go well, and may Star Clan light your path." He sounded baffled, as if he expected Talltail to blurt out that it was all a joke. "May Star Clan light your path," murmured Cloudrunner and Ryestock. "Don't go!" Wrenkit dashed forward and ducked under Talltail's belly. Weaving in and out of his legs, she mewed, "You can't go! Who will play with us?" He nosed her toward Palebird. "You've plenty of den mates to play with." "But they can't give us badger rides!" Wrenkit wailed. "Don't worry, dear." Palebird began washing her again. "He won't be gone long." Talltail scanned the stunned faces of his clanmates. "I'm going for good," he told them. "I've made up my mind. I've spent long enough looking at distant lands from Outlook Rock. I want to see them up close. I want to explore places that no clan cat has ever been." "Heatherstar?" Dawnstripe stared at the Wind Clan leader. "Are you really going to let him do this?" "It's his choice," Heatherstar answered. Before anyone else could argue, Talltail padded forward, pushing past his clanmates. "Talltail," Dowspring gasped as he passed. "I'll miss you." "Me too," Stagleap called. "I don't understand." Shrewclaw blinked as Talltail reached him. "How can you leave? We trained together. I thought I'd always have you to hunt alongside." Talltail shrugged. "Hunt with someone else." He met Shrewclaw's gaze, surprised to find it darkening with sadness. "I thought you'd be glad to see the worm cat leave." "I'm sorry." Shrewclaw's ear twitched. "I was only ever teasing." "It's more fun teasing than being teased," Talltail commented. He pushed away his bitterness and lifted his chin. "But that's not why I'm leaving. There's something I have to do, and I can't do it here." "Good luck," Lily Whisker's rasping mew sounded in his ear. She touched her muzzle to his cheek, and he paused for a moment to breathe in her warm, familiar scent. "Thank you, Lily Whisker." Flicking his tail, he marched for the camp entrance, refusing to look back. He pushed through the heather, his mind whirling. I'm actually leaving. After dreaming about what lay beyond the clan borders for so long, he was going to find out. Fear and excitement surged beneath his pelt. Talltail! Barkface was following him across the grass clearing. Can I walk with you to the edge of the moor? Talltail slowed. Yes, of course. Barkface fell in beside him as they skirted the heather and began to climb the slope to the moor top. You weren't unhappy all the time, were you? Barkface mewed as they neared the ridge. No. Talltail's heart swelled as he remembered his first day's training when he nearly outran Stagpaw. And all the times he'd skimmed the grass, fast as a bird, the wind streaming through his pelt. His first catch, his first gathering, his first sight of the moonstone. But I'll only find peace when I've made Sparrow pay for killing Sandgorse. Barkface's pelt brushed his flank. Do you really think that will change anything? Of course it will. The dark fury that slumbered in Talltail's belly began to stir. He wanted Sparrow to suffer as Sandgorse must have suffered. You can always come back afterward, Barkface murmured. Come back? Talltail didn't answer. He was never coming back. They reached the peak of the moor. Talltail looked out across the valley, the wind lifting his pelt. Goodbye, Barkface. He faced his friend. You're going to be a great medicine cat. Then he bounded down the slope, all the way across the border toward the Thunderpath. He fought the urge to turn and see Barkface silhouetted against the sky. His future lay ahead of him, not behind.